Hey, Shalom, Makim Shalom. First and foremost, as always, I would like to give all praise, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Merchakwadash. I would like to give double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone that taught us His truth and that's what teaching His truth. And much peace, love, and salutation to the elect, beginning with the 144,000 all the way down to the large multitude that believes and who the Lord will deliver in these last days. To you all I say Shalom. I'm the brother Tazamon from the Great Millstone Dallas Camp, coming back today with another lesson, and I pray this lesson will be edifying to the elect. And I just want to do a read to this video that you see here on the screen done by Elder Apostle Tahar, entitled Deuteronomy 28 and 68 did not take place in 70 AD. A must-watch video for all of the camps out there, because you have individuals who like to say that the curses that are written about in Deuteronomy 28, or Leviticus 26, but mainly in Deuteronomy 28, have already come to pass, and that those are curses that will befall the Israelites, all right, and the captivities that have already that they've already been in. All right, now you read about the different captivity, the major captivities, I'd rather say, that Israel will be in. All right, whenever you read in Daniel 2, as well as in Daniel 7, which were the same vision, but just different, descriptions of the vision. But it pretty much represented the same thing. Like you had the head of gold, which was the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Then you had the breastplate of silver, which was the Medo-Persian Empire. You had the loins of brass, which was the Greek Empire. You had the legs of iron, which was the Roman Empire. Then you had the feet of iron mixed with miry clay, which was a revival of the Roman Empire. All right, and those were the main captivities that you would see Israel partake in, and kind of give you a timeline on where we will be at in prophecy. Okay, so when you read in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, all right, some of those, the curses that we read about, they have befallen our people in other captivities as well. Yes, you see, but as the scripture says, that there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, and then history repeats itself. All right, with history repeating itself, all right, the curses that will befall our people in the last days, they would happen again. You see, and then one of the major prophecies, or one of the major curses, I'd rather say, which was a prophecy as well too, but one of the major curses that we use to identify who the true chosen people of Israel are today is Deuteronomy 28 and 68, that says that we will go into Egypt again by way of ships. Okay, and as you listen to Elder Apostle Tahar's lesson here, he was going in on how that wouldn't be the case if we traveled to Egypt from Israel, because you wouldn't need to go on a ship to travel from Egypt to Israel. You see, or vice versa. There was particular trade routes like the Via Maris, which was a trade route along the Mediterranean coast. But why would you get on a boat to go to Egypt when you could just travel along the trade route? It doesn't make sense, because that Egypt is talking about here in America. That's why when you read in Revelation 11, it says that their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom in Egypt, which is talking about here in America today. You see, but if you're spiritually discerned, all right, and you're a natural man, you're not going to receive the things of the Spirit of the Most High. Now, the basis of this lesson I want to go into was the Joel's prophecy. All right, in the triangular trade. So they call it the triangle trade, or the triangular trade, which the Elder Apostle Tahar was going in on it here. But you have the triangle trade, which is kind of ties into the transatlantic slave trade, which is biblical prophecy. And this is going to be more so a back to the basics. You have newer listeners, but this is a prophecy that it identifies, who the Israelites are, how you can identify the Israelites, because remember the scripture says this. All right, and I got something in Chat GPT about the triangular trade, but remember the prophecy says this in the book of Hosea. All right, Hosea 1 and 10. It says, we'll start at verse 9. It says, then said the Most High, call his name Lo Ami, which is La'aimya, which is La'a means no, right? And then Aim, which is people, then Yah is pertaining to my. So it means not my people, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your power. You see that? Because we broke the law, statutes, and commandments, and the curses befell us, so the Lord casted us away. Okay, due to the curses. You can read that in Jeremiah, the 15th chapter, the first 2 verses, as well as in various different other scriptures, man. Okay, it talks about how we pretty much committed adultery against Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. So he divorced us. All right, the scriptures talk about how Zion is likened unto a woman that's forsaken. Okay, verse 10, it says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living power. And that there, we're going to emphasize on the word there. All right, it's talking about America. It's talking about here in Babylon the Great. You see, this is where Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai has caused the bulk of his prophets to be in the latter days. Now, granted, there are prophets as well in we've been scattered, but the bulk of the prophets are going to be here in America, Babylon the Great. You see, because this is the land where we were put to shame as Israel, as Israelites, man. Predominantly, mainly, the southern kingdom, but Judah and Ephraim were oppressed together, as a prophecy says. You see, but that all had to happen due to the fact of a prophecy coming to pass. You see, so there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living power. That there is talking about here in America. Okay, let's read verse 11 as well. Then we'll get the ChatGPT article. It says, then shall the children of Judah then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together. And what's gathering us together right now? The word is gathering us together. Okay, it says, and appoint themselves one head, and that one head is talking about King David. All right, and we believe through the Spirit, all right, that King David has already came on the scene, and that was King Masha. I never met him, but I believe the report that was given, all right, by our apostles that actually were in direct contact with King David, King Masha. You see, and I believe through the Spirit he's going to come back. I mean, he will. He's going to take back his rightful position on the throne. But when I say come back, I mean like the Lord. I believe the Lord gonna raise him up before he comes, before Yahweh Shai comes on the scene. But that's just me speaking as a man. It says, then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together, and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land. You see, and how are we going to come up out of the land? We're going to come up out of the land via the chariots, man. All right, we're going to be abducted by the chariots of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, what the world calls UFOs. We're going to come up out of the land. You see, it says, for great shall be the day of Jezreel, which Jezreel in the Hebrew is Yazra'Allah. All right, which Yah, which is he, and then Zerai is seed, and then Allah, power. See, I think I said seed of Israel by mistake, so that was a slip of the tongue. So you got Yazra'Allah, which is seed of the power, or the Most High, the Most High souls, You got Zerai, which is seed, and then Allah, seed of the power. But that prophecy, this prophecy is getting ready to come to pass whenever Yahweh Shai returns. Now, excuse me, I have an overview. I typed in, I said, what are the details on the triangle slave trade and how the Arabs and Africans traded slaves to Europeans for guns, wine, and women? All right, that's what I typed in there, as you see. It says the transatlantic slave trade, it says often called the triangle trade, was one of the most devastating and complex systems of human human exploitation in history. You see, and this is where you get the term, whenever we were here in the Americas, whenever we got shipped here to the Americas, I'd rather say that's where you get the term chattel slavery, which was the most brutal form of slavery, the most brutal form of slavery ever known to man. Okay, which that slavery was a judgment from Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, man. Okay, and you read about that in Deuteronomy 28. And, tells you how we're gonna have yokes of iron around our neck. You know, we're gonna get some of the curses. While Europeans were the primary drivers of the transatlantic system, Arabs and some African rulers played major roles in the supply side of the trade. Here's a breakdown. The Triangle Slave Trade Overview. It says the name Triangle Trade refers to the three-leg trade route, Europe to Africa. It says goods like guns, cloth, iron, rum, and manufactured goods were shipped to West Africa. Now, where did we go? Where did the bulk of us go? All right, the bulk of us went and fled, all right, into West Africa during the time of Roman persecution. All right, and you can read that in Revelation 12. Just bear with me. This is Revelation 12, and we'll start at verse 5. It says, "And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron." This is going into Yahushua being born. All right, and that was, you know, that's the inheritance that he received from Yahweh. That's why, you know, you had King Herod trying to put Yahushua to death. All right, trying to find all males that were 2 years old and younger, and he slew them. You see, it says, "And her child was caught up into the Most High, and to his throne." You see, you know, you read that in Matthew 28 as well as in Acts 1. You know, when Yahushua got taken up, right? Verse 6, it says, "And the woman," which that woman is not talking about Mary. That woman is talking about the nation of Israel, right? It says, "And the woman fled into the wilderness," which that wilderness is going into what? The interiors of Africa, mainly northern and mainly Western, Central Africa, Northern Africa, right? Where she hath prepared a place prepared of the Most High, right? That they should feed her there 1,203 score days. Which 1,203 score days, all right, is 3.5 years. That's where you get the after 3 days and a half. After 3 days and a half, then the spirit of life entered into them. You see, and that 1,203 score days is talking about our time here in America, where we would have to be sustained by this devil. Remember, the scripture says that we would have to go to our enemy for the one of all things. Okay. I don't know why it keeps going down like that. It says number 2, Africa to the Americas, which was the Middle Passage, and that was a brutal path that Jake had to take. You know, being packed in those ships like sardines on top of one another, defecating on one another, shitting and pissing on each other. You know, women, you know, pregnant, having babies. You know, while being packed like sardines in a ship. You know, you had individuals that would die, you know, chained up right next to you, and that dead body decomposing next to you, man. So you could just imagine how bad it stunk, and that was judgment from the Lord, man. Okay, it says enslaved Africans were transported across the Atlantic to the Americas. You see, so it went from Europe to Africa, then Africa to the Africa to the Americas, right? Which was it began more so in Central America, Central and South America, and then it, you know, segue up into North America, you know, after the establishment of the other 13 colonies and such, right? It says this leg was called the Middle Passage, where millions died in brutal conditions. And once again, like I said, those conditions were brutal, man. You were treated like a complete animal, you know? And then it says Americas to Europe. It says raw materials like sugar, cotton, tobacco, and molasses were shipped back to Europe. And who was on them? Those fields, you know, tending to the sugar cane, tending to the cotton, tending to the tobacco, tending to the molasses. Who was the ones that was doing that? Israelites. Jake. This doesn't fall in line with the small hats over there in the land of Israel today. Okay, but once again, the prophecy in Deuteronomy 28 states that these things would happen. Role of the Arabs in Islamic slave trade. Long before the Europeans, Arab traders have been enslaving black Africans for centuries through the trans-Saharan and Indian Ocean slave trades. Those are two slave trades that you can look up on your own. Okay, and this was before the Triangle Trade. You got the trans-Saharan and Indian Ocean slave trades. These slaves were taken to Northern Africa, the Middle East, and even India and China. You see that? And this goes to show, this goes to show the prophecy on how, all right, we will be scattered. You see? It said Northern Africa, the Middle East, right? It said Northern Africa, the Middle East, and even India and China. So you got some Jakes that are in China that could look like a so-called Chinese man or woman, but really indeed they're Israelites. Israelites that look like the so-called East Indians. You see? Because remember, we will be scattered, man. All right? This is Deuteronomy 28. Verse 64, it says, "And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other." See that? "And there shalt thou serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." You see that? So we will be scattered among the heathen. You see? Which was a major prophecy, which links in with the Gentiles that you read about in the New Testament receiving the word and repenting. Okay? Those Gentiles that you read about in the New Testament, all right, are Israelites. Okay? It says, Arab merchants established slave routes across the Sahara, East Africa, and the Swahili coast. Arab slavers castrated many male slaves and used women for concubinage. You see that? So they would castrate the men, right? And when you castrate a man, you can't reproduce. Okay? And they used the women as concubinage. You see, and they was popping their women. You see, that's why when you read in Psalm 83, it gives you the list of nations that the Lord that are confederate against us, man. Because these individuals knew that we were the Israelites, that we are the Israelites. But through history and through iconoclasm and through our heritage being taken away from us, we're fed the history that's false. We're fed history that's not true. You see? It says the Arab slave trade lasted over 1,000 years. Over 1,000 years this was going on. Yeah, Jake being shipped to India, the Middle East, Northern Africa, China, even going as far north into Turkey. That's why, we were scattered, man. The Arab slave trade lasted over 1,000 years and is estimated to have enslaved 17 plus million. It says Africans here, but we know who they are. Israelites. African involvement in the trade. Some West African rulers and merchants actively participated in capturing and selling rival ethnic groups of war captives to European traders. They exchanged slaves for guns and ammunition, which made them more powerful and able to wage war. Alcohol like wine and rum, textiles, beads and trinkets. In rare cases, women, usually from Europe or North Africa, were used as a form of diplomatic gift or reward. Now, remember the scripture says that that they gave gifts to one another. What's that in Revelation? Yep, Revelation 11, and we'll start at verse 9. It says, "And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half," which is that 350-year period where we were completely destroyed as a people. We was in the captivity. The so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, we were completely destroyed, man. Right? And that time was from roughly around 1619 all the way up into, the late 60s, early 70s, right? and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. See that we wasn't laid to rest. And really not being put in the grave is really like a dishonorable death too, right? It says, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry and shall send gifts one to another. You see that? And what were those gifts? Slaves. Because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. And who was those two prophets? The northern and the southern kingdom. You know, really going back to the establishment of the tabernacle of David that was established. You see, where we had all the heathen. King David had all the heathen. He subdued them, right? And then when King Solomon sat on the throne, they all paid tribute. Tribute to Solomon, right? It says important. This does not absolve Europeans from guilt. You see that? Hey, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Edomites created the global demand, financed slave raids, and industrialized the brutality. You see it in what you see going on in America today is still a faction or a part of the industrialization, all right, of the triangle slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery here in the Americas. You see? So you're going to reap what you sow. Okay? Example of traded accident. A European ship might dock off the coast of present-day Ghana. The ship carries muskets, iron bars, and wine. See that? So it's coming from Ghana, right? It has those on the boat, right? It says a local African chief who had raided a neighboring village sells 100 captives to the Europeans, right? The Europeans loaded the enslaved Africans onto the ship and depart from the Caribbean or Brazil. There, the slaves are sold and the ship is loaded with sugar and tobacco for the return to Europe. That's the triangle slave trade right there. You see? It'll go from Europe to Africa, Africa to the Americas, Americas back to Europe. And that was going on for many years, and they financed that, man. And who financed the slave trade? The so-called the JOOs, put it like that, right? And then it has the biblical. You see that? It's even giving you the biblical precepts there, the biblical parallel, letting you know that it's literally telling you, letting you know who those people were. They weren't Africans, they were Israelites. But you got these unlearned individuals. Oh, black people sold black people to slavery too. But you did have Israelites that did sell other Israelites into slavery. That did happen, But going into the prophecy of how you would have the Hamites, and Ishmael working together, that's biblical prophecy. See? So you have millions upon millions and millions, right? You had millions upon millions of Israelites, right? That was just being shipped all over the damn place, man. You see? Which furthered into our scattering, as the prophecy said would happen. All right. So let's go ahead and get ready to wrap it up. Let's read Joel, the 3rd chapter, not the whole thing. All right. This is Joel chapter 3, verse 1. It says, for behold, it says, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, which the Lord is bringing together, he's bringing again the captivity now via this word going out, and the Lord establishing the house of David as in the days of old, right? It says, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there from my people and from my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and part of my land. You see, so all this going on right now in the Middle East, these wars that are getting ready to pop off, that are already popping off, I'd rather say, right? All these things that we see taking place right now in the Middle East, all right, is all happening due to the heathen, beginning with Esau, selling us into slavery, which the Lord used the Edomites and these different heathen nations to sell us into slavery. But the scripture says that they helped further, they furthered the affliction. Verse 3, it says, and they have cast lots for my people. You see that? They have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Did we not just read that? We just read the history, what we just seen in Chat GPT. You see? And that happened. Let's get Deuteronomy 28 and 32. Excuse me. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 32. Now, this is a curse. Okay? It says, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. You see, your children being taken away from you. You would have a family, you have a husband, a man and a woman and their children, and that would just be completely separated, man. The man will go, will stay in Virginia, then, you know what I'm saying? Then the wife would go to South Carolina, then, the son would go to, I don't know, some would go to Florida, and the daughter would go to Pennsylvania. You know what I'm saying? It would just be completely just separated, man. You see? Which is wicked as all hell, man. But once again, that was due to the fact of that was due to the curses. See, but we're gonna do that to you, Esau. We're gonna do beginning with you goddamn Edomites, man. We're gonna do that to you, man. See, y'all did a transatlantic slave trade and all that. See, we're gonna have a transgalactic slave trade. See, your ass gonna be getting shipped out and sold, to different planets. You see, we gonna have a slave trade, but we gonna do it in style. See, and then also don't forget about all the freakism that was going on, the buck breaking and all that kind of stupid ass, nasty ass Mo activity that Esau was into. See, we not gonna do all that. See? So going back, actually, let's read, there's another one I want to grab. Let's get Lamentation 5. This is Lamentation 5 and 1. It says, remember, O Yahweh, what has come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach. And the Lord is beholding and considering our reproach now. It says, our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens. Look at the land of Israel today. Who dwells in the land of Israel today? You got the Amalekites over there dwelling in our land, complete strangers. You see, that's why you can't even plot out, the land of Judah, the land of Naphtali, the land of Dan. Well, not Dan, but if you look on the map, it will show Dan. But Dan wasn't mentioned in Revelation 7. You know what I'm saying? So, slip of the tongue right there. But y'all get what I'm saying? Judah, Benjamin, the land of Benjamin. Judah, Simeon. You can't even find those lands on a map due to all the excavations that's been taking place in our land. And what happened? Our land got taken over by the heathen due to what? A Balfour Declaration. Now you've always had the Palestinians, and which they're not a part of the land. That's not their homeland either. But the Palestinians and the Israelis and things of that nature, they're all over there fighting over a plot of land that doesn't even belong to them, man. It says, our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens. We are orphans and fatherless. Our mothers are as widows. You see that? Because here you don't have any sure dwelling here, man. Being in the land of in the land of your captivity. That's why the scripture says, I think it's in Isaiah somewhere, the young men have fainted in the streets. Our people are through. All right, Joel 3 and 4 says, yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon and all the coast of Palestine, which is symbolically representing who? The Africans and the so-called Africans and the so-called Arabs. It says, will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head. You see? So you're going to pay. All you guys going to pay, man. That touch the apple of Yahweh B'Shem Shai's eye, every single last one of you are going to pay. And you're going to pay by you going into captivity. You're going to go into slavery. We're going to slap chains of iron on you. We're going to take your women. That's what's going to happen. This is Amos chapter 1, verse 6. It says, thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4, I would not turn away the punishment thereof. Because they carried away the captivity, because they carried away captivity the whole, let me read it again. Because they carried away captive the whole captivity to deliver them up to Edom. Who is Edom? The so-called self-proclaimed white man. This is where you get the triangle slave trade. This is where you get what was being traded off whenever those ships came from Europe to Africa, right? Then Africa to the Americas, and Americas back to Europe. That's what was going on. It says, but I will send fire on the wall of Gaza, which shall devour the palaces thereof. And I will cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod, and him that holdeth the scepter from Eshkelon, and I will turn my hand against Ekron. And the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, saith Yahweh. See, so that judgment is, hey, spiritually, man, those Palestinians over there, which a lot of them are Jake too. Well, I'd rather say some of them are Jake over there as well. See, but that could be, judgment from when they were selling us. Because look at the land of Gaza right now. And who's dwelling in that land right now? Ishmael's over there. Thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom, and remembered not the brotherly covenant. See that? So they were all in confederate against us, man. They know exactly who we are. Back in Joel verse 5, it says, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians. Who are the Grecians? The Europeans, air quote, the Edomites, right? That ye might remove them far from their border. See that? We were sold, we were scattered. And one of the main ways we were scattered was what? Via the transatlantic slave trade, the triangle slave trade. Deuteronomy 28 and 68. Okay? Isaiah 5 and 13, it says, therefore my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge. You see, it was a judgment from Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. It says, and their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. And the scriptures talk about in Isaiah 47 that they laid heavily the yoke upon the odor of our people. We will be discontinued. We will be discontinued from our heritage, man. That's why most, you look at Jake now, they don't have no clue that they're Israelites. We didn't know that we were Israelites. We didn't know we were chosen people of the Lord at one point. We were subject to these idols. We were subject to the ways, we were subject to the ways of our oppressor. All right. It's the book of Baruch 4 in verse 6. It says, ye were sold to the nations, not for your destruction. You see, so we were sold. Who were sold? The Israelites were sold. We were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because ye moved the Most High to wrath, and ye were delivered up into the enemies. You see, that's why we pissed Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai off, and the Lord sent us unto the hand. He sent us into the hands of our enemies, man, as a punishment. That's what happened. You see? So now what we see today going on, okay, is a return of the captivity taking place. You see? And our enemies are and now our enemies are getting ready to go into captivity. Our enemies are getting ready to be taken down. This is Jeremiah 30, verse 16. It says, therefore all they that devour thee shall be devoured. You see that? And all thine adversaries, every one of them shall go into captivity. That's written. You see? And they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all they that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. So every single last one of them they're going to go into captivity. And there's no escaping that judgment. So I pray this lesson was edifying to the elect. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, Bashem Chakodash. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders, the great millstone that taught us his truth, and that's what teaching his truth, and much peace, love, and salutations to the elect. Until next time, Lord willing, I say shalom.